Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at something a little bit different, I guess you could say, but it's something that impacts every single relationship that we have. And that is what happens when communication breaks down.
Yeah.
We have an excerpt here that we're going to look at
Yeah.
that it goes beyond just saying like,
Yeah.
communication is good. Communication is important.
Right.
It actually dives into the how and the why of how silence can really just wear away at the relationship.
Absolutely.
And we're not just talking about romantic relationships. This applies to friendships, family, professional connections, everything. So this should be pretty interesting, and hopefully we can provide some good insights for you all today.
Absolutely.
So the source really emphasizes that. Basically, cutting off communication like ending communications like cutting off the life support to a relationship.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's kind of like that out of sight, out of mind phenomenon, but it goes a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And that, right, because it's not just that you're not physically present, but when we're not communicating, we naturally kind of start to invest less emotionally in that relationship. And so it really does start to wither. And, there are all these different ways that communication breaks down too.
Oh, that's a great point. And the source actually uses this really kind of stark phrase. That's where the relationship ends, with a little crying emoji. But I'm really interested in how does it get to that point?
Yeah.
What are some of those patterns or ways that communication can break down?
Well, I think one of the most common ones that we see is avoidance.
Okay.
When one person just consistently avoids those difficult conversations or shuts down emotionally. And so it creates this wall between the two people. And over time, that lack of vulnerability really leads to resentment and distance.
It's like they're there, but not really there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're physically present, but emotionally checked out. Another big one is passive aggression.
Oh, interesting.
Communicating indirectly through subtle digs or sarcasm.
Oh.
And it just creates this atmosphere of tension and distrust. It makes real connection impossible.
Wow, that's so sneaky though. Because there's not total silence.
Right.
But it's still chipping away at the connection.
Yeah.
So we've got avoidance, we've got passive aggression. Anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. Another one is just kind of neglecting to nurture the relationship. So, life gets busy, priorities shift, and, maybe communication becomes more superficial, like quick texts or just transactional exchanges.
Just the bare minimum.
And you think, oh, well, we're still in touch, but without those deeper, more meaningful conversations, that emotional intimacy just fades.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what the source is really highlighting here. It's not just the lack of any communication.
Right.
It's the lack of that real meaningful connection. And it makes me think of that line from the source too, about countless relationships in this city. This feels so universal, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, these patterns, they play out everywhere, not just in romantic relationships, but in friendships, families, even workplaces. And, I think a lot of people don't realize how much of an impact communication has, but, research actually shows that.
Right.
Strong communication is a key predictor of relationship satisfaction and longevity.
So it's kind of a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
But knowing all of this, what can we do about it? Because it kind of feels a little bleak if we just point out all the problems.
Yeah. Well, I think awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
Right. So now that we know this, we can start to be more mindful of our communication habits, and then we can actually take action. So really, it's about cultivating healthy communication habits, which includes things like active listening, learning to express your needs clearly and respectfully, and being willing to have those tough conversations instead of avoiding them.
Okay, that's where it gets really tricky though, right?
Yeah.
How do you actually have those tough conversations without making things worse?
Right. Well, it's definitely a skill that takes practice, but one really effective strategy is to use what are called I statements. To express your feelings without blaming the other person. So, for example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you could say, "I feel unheard when I don't get a chance to share my thoughts."
Oh, that's good. So it's about taking ownership of your feelings rather than putting it on the other person.
Right. And it's equally important to be a good listener, to really hear and validate the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
This has been really eye-opening. I feel like we've gone way beyond just saying communication is good. We've really dug into the specifics of how it can break down, and even some ideas of how to start to fix it. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I would just say think about the relationships in your life that matter most to you. Are you nurturing those connections with open and honest communication? And if not, what's one small step that you can take today to start bridging that gap? Because even a simple gesture of reaching out can make a world of difference.
So true, like a quick text, a phone call, even just a handwritten note.
Yeah.
Like those little efforts go a long way in keeping those connections strong and healthy.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.